So I was saying just then about going through and kind of going through your record, things like that, to come up with
Uh,
what we're going to talk about. And the first thing that struck me, which I thought was mad, which I can't really believe, is that your pro debut was only 2020.
yeah.
Like
Uh,
that
yeah.
that feels ages ago.
Yeah, it was weird. Like, I made my pro debut on the 15th of February 2020, and then we went into lockdown a month later. So, yeah, it's around about 3 years ago. So it's crazy. Time flies.
It's like impressive as well that you've been able to get in as many fights as you have through that period, because there was a while where like I think Cage Warriors is a huge part of that. They've been very good at keeping fighters busy, but um to have that many fights in this 3 years where some guys have been struggling to get one a year, you know.
Course. I think as well there was a promotion called Evolution of Combat that were based in the north of England and also Scotland. If it wasn't for them, I had two fights in 2020, and if it wasn't for them, they were the only ones in Scotland putting up shows regularly. So if it wasn't for them, I definitely wouldn't have had my pro. I don't know where I'd have had my pro debut, and the fight after that in August. They done that when sorry, they had a fight in August, yes, and then the August following that. So I had three fights under Evolution of Combat, and if it looked like there was no, they didn't have to put on those shows, especially my
Mm.
fight number two and fight number three. Fight number two, especially, that I'm sure they lost thousands of money because new restrictions came in like weeks before the fight, but they stayed with it. So I've got a lot to thank Evolution of Combat for that. And even like in terms of fight stuff, like I made my amateur debut Halloween, October 31st, 2015. So it's crazy to think like how long ago that was, but at the same in the same time, it wasn't. It's not
Yeah.
It's not actually that long.
It's like it's a strange thing in that, like, for some people it has been quite a slow period of their career just with getting fights, specifically, you know, that 2020 year. But for you to accomplish this much in 3 years, did you think you'd be at this point by now, or possibly even further?
To in the truth, like to tell you the truth, I think me like our goals were always to have four professional fights in the domestic scene and then go into Cage Warriors, and I did have that, but albeit I lost my fourth pro fight. Um, so in a way, like it's kind of coming together the way that we planned, but there was obviously a bump in the road. But it's just fighting for you, isn't it? It's the sport that we're playing in. You're not going to win every single fight, and like as cliche as it is, that loss is incredible for me, to be honest.
Mm. What was it? What was the biggest takeaway from that loss for you?
The biggest thing was the biggest thing was my ground and pound. Because the bit that would be the biggest thing is my grappling for MMA sense, like blending all the sports together. Like even if you look at my Cage Warriors debut, I was look at my stance. I'm very tall. I'm fighting like a Thai boxer, and then I'm shooting from distance. So individually, all the sports I was like proficient at, but I
Mm.
wasn't very good at blending them together. And if you watch my pro debut, like I'm trying like an over under pass in MMA. Why am I doing like that is so silly? And then I'm trying the same thing against like Westwood. It's all right. I'll wait for him to open his guard, and then I'll like open the. I'll wait for him to open the guard, and then I'll pass. Whereas the goal should be to posture and punch the living daylight out your opponent and do as much damage as you can. Whereas I'm playing like a jiu-jitsu game where I'm trying to pass guard and get 2 points. So in hindsight, it was absolutely. I don't know what I was thinking, but without Luke Westwood tying my arms, and again, I'm sitting letting him take overhooks, and I'm not letting him as I'm like, here, have this. I'm letting him as if it's all right, you can tie me up, and then I'll pass off it. Like, stupid. Why would you let anyone tie you up? You're starting um, like 5 steps behind in the race. You're putting yourself 5 steps behind in the race. Posture, punch his lights out. Then he'll open the guard. Then you'll pass. Then you'll punch him even more, and then you'll submit him or finish him. That's the goal. It's so simple. But for whatever reason, I just wasn't processing that in my head. But I am now.
Mm. It's crazy that you say that because that's such a like fundamental part of what you do now. That it is strange to even hear you talk about that not clicking. Because if you'd watch, you know, the last few performances you've had in Cage Warriors, that is like I would say that's probably the thing you do best is mixing that, and specifically on the ground and pound and stuff like that. So that journey alone to go from having those mistakes to it being a clear like asset for you in a lot of your fights is
Yeah.
pretty crazy considering it's not been that long.
I think the pace of the fight as well, like going into that fight, if you watch the fight, I start really fast, and my idea was like I'm going to start chaotic, make it crazy, make it high pace fight. But see, at the end of the day, like that's probably the worst thing. That's just an experience, I think. Like, and maybe like you want to go into the fight and settle. I think like if you go in and you make it erratic and chaotic, like anybody can win. You're giving them your opponent that chance. So, I'm it's very cheesy and it's very cliche, but I'm so glad that happened at that point in time because if I beat Luke Westwood, I wouldn't have addressed that. And I remember going to my coach Ian the Friday after the fight. He's like, "We'll go over the fight," and he showed me like one technique, basically like the concept that I've just said there. And I
Mm.
was like, and he 2 seconds. That's what he said. It took honestly it took like 2 minutes, and he said, "Right, so we train then." I was like, "No, no, no, we're going over the fight." He's like, "That's it. Like that's it. You address that, and you'll be a monster on top, and nobody will ever want you. When you take people down, you'll finish them, and you'll break their will." I'm like, "Right, okay, let's do that."
We were talking about the kind of progression through Cage Warriors and whether you're where you expected to be by this point. I think that in certain times of Cage Warriors, you probably would have got a title shot by now. I think the
Yeah,
bantamweight division is just particularly good right now. There's some top guys. Obviously, we don't know right now what is going to happen with the belt. I mean, we know, but we don't have it confirmed, kind of thing
completely.
yet.
Yeah,
I think as soon as your fight was made, it was like, okay, so they've gone that direction with it.
yeah, of
Um,
course.
do you feel the same that you probably would have had a title shot by now? But I feel like in some ways that's not necessarily a bad thing that you've got another fight, considering your pro debut was only 3 years ago.
No, definitely not. Like, obviously, I want to be the champion, but the worst thing you can do is rush these things. Like, I I'm doing my apprenticeship just now, right, in Cage Warriors, and I think the worst thing you can do is rush an opportunity. Like you said, I turned professional 3 years ago, and maybe last November. I picked up my first loss. I've got 3 fights on the bounce. Like I'm on a 3 fight win streak. There is no rush to like for these opportunities. If you firmly believe that you're going to achieve that and you firmly believe you're on the right path, what you've got to do is keep keep building experience because when that title shot comes, you want to be ready to defend the belt and you want to be ready to potentially move on to onto the UFC or whatever. So, um, my eyes are always set in the title. But with every opportunity, every fight that Cage Warriors give me, I trust Dean. I trust my coaches. I trust the timing of everything. And like I treat every fight with the utmost respect. So, Cage Warriors will have different directions as well. So I trust what they're doing at the same time, and they, they're incredible at what they do. Like, especially in Dean as a matchmaker, he'll always have a plan.
Yeah, for sure. Cage Warriors as well. Like I know that we're in a kind of part of the history of UK MMA where people come through and they go, I want to take the Cage Warriors route. It's the proven path. But it really feels like a home for yourself, especially with these shows in Manchester where there is a corner of the crowd that is dedicated to your following. It reminds me of I was in one of their events in London and Dean Truman was fighting and he brought so many people with him that it was so loud until he fought. And then suddenly like a quarter of the crowd left with him. Like it was surreal to watch. And you have that as well, which I suppose it helps the fact that you've got Cage Warriors regularly host shows in Manchester and that's not too far for your fans to travel. But it feels like it fits so perfectly for you, the whole Cage Warriors thing, and kind of that lends itself to taking it a bit slower because you know that you're not in a rush to get through Cage Warriors and they're not in a rush to kind of push you out again, you know?
No, absolutely as well. Like if you think about the long term goal to be in the UFC, you very rarely get second chances as well. So I could easily be like, right, I want a shot in the Ultimate Fighter, I want a shot in Dana White's Contender Series, I want that opportunity now. But you've got to appreciate there's levels to the games, and like I said, I'm still doing my apprenticeship, I'm still learning how to fight, and even my last fight, for instance, I lost the first round, but I went back to the corner and I was like, in my head, I was like, don't worry, like you've got 15 minutes, you've got 10 more minutes, you'll take over as the fight goes on, like complete composure. So I'm building it, I'm getting comfortable in these environments, and in terms of like the support that Cage Warriors have got, like I'm not asking them like who have I got, who have I got. I'm just saying like what show do you use, what show am I on, so I know to prepare for a day. The opponent come to me with an opponent, and I'll say yes.
Hmm.
But just let me know what show I'm on just now. And I think I was asking that New Year, after the New Year's Eve show, and they said you'll be on Manchester. I thought, right, well, I know what way that they're kind of like looking to go with this. And it is incredible and it makes so much sense. But see, to be honest, like, see behind the scenes, cage warriors are amazing to, let's say, work for and fight for. Like, I feel like I've got a good relationship with all the staff. I've got a good relationship with the company. And I do really enjoy like being at the events and fighting for them. It's a privilege, to be honest.
Mm. The final thing I wanted to touch on is something I heard you bring up in a previous interview, and it kind of came up and then it didn't come up again. But it kind of interests me because I think it's just an interesting thing that a lot of fighters I think do, but maybe a lot of them don't talk about as much, which is like manifestation. I heard you mention that you have a memory box.
Yeah.
And I wanted to know the story behind that. What kind of things that like you associate with that, and how that has helped you.
So my memory box is like obviously I've had that memory box for like not my whole life, but it's got things to do with like my family, and it's quite a personal box for me, to be honest. But it was quite small, and it's kind of grew into a bigger box. But what I started to do then is I started just to use that like memory box as like a value of like I would put like old football ticket games into the box, and then maybe I went to see like Kevin Bridges, or I went my first city holiday, first holiday with my friends. Like, I put wee small things like that in it, like wee memories along the way.
Mhm.
Um, and I would just kind of add things to that. And then I done the same with my Cage Warriors gloves. I always tell that story where my coach Dean Riley, he was at the time when I first started, he fought in Cage Warriors, and he had his last fight just as about a month after I started training with him.
Mhm.
And he gave me these pair of Cage Warriors gloves and said, like, if you do want to be in the UFC and a world champion, this is the route that you've got to take, the Cage Warriors route, because it's the best in Europe. So these gloves are for you. You see this as motivation. Um, see this as motivation. And that's where you'll be if you keep working hard. And I was like big-eyed, pure, like, oh my God, the professional fighters just gave me his gloves. Oh my goodness. I put them in my memory box. And what I said is I'm going to keep them in my memory box. I'm not going to touch them. And I'm going to keep them there until I turn professional. And then when I turn professional, I'm going to wear them for my first full professional fights. And then Cage Warriors are going to sign me. And that's honestly, that exact thing happened. I didn't manifest the loss in the fourth fight. I didn't manifest to lose like my eighth amateur fight, but these things happen along the way. So, the memory box is a mixture. Like it's a very it's a very personal thing that's got a lot of value in my life, and a lot of the like my best friend got married, and some of the wee gifts are in my memory box. My big sister, I walked her down the aisle. Some things from that day are in that memory box. So there's loads more, but the Cage Warriors gloves had a wee place in the memory box, and now I've got three pairs of my own, plus Dean's old pair.
um, Probably gonna need a bigger box, mate, if you win that belt, I'd imagine.
Yeah. So, well, the box is a gift to me from my mum, and it was like maybe it's quite small. So then
Mhm.
I bought a bigger box and put the smaller sentimental box in that, and then I created my own. So every so often I go through it and I'm like, I can't think of an example, but maybe I had like these orange Ray-Bans that I bought on my first 60 holiday in Zante, and they were broken, and I kept them. And I thought,
Mhm.
right, it's time for them to. They don't deserve a spot in the memory box anymore. uh, so every so often I'll go through it and then realize how valuable that memory was. But I'm a very emotional and sentimental person, so I try and cherish every positive and negative part of my life. And that memory box has probably captured some of the biggest memories of my life.
Well, might have to start clearing some more space soon, mate. Not just the Ray-Bans are gonna have to go. I'm afraid there's gonna have to be a few more.
I'm gonna need a room, a house, a mansion. No, I'm kidding.
I'll be catching up with you in 10 years, yeah, and it'll be the memory room instead. Yeah, there'll be loads in there.
I did that.
Nice one, mate. Thank you for your time. Like I said, hopefully we'll catch back up with you before the fight, but we'll just see how scheduling works out for you and stuff like that. And we can talk more specifically about the fight and stuff.
No, absolutely. Thank you so much for your time, and thanks for everyone for listening. Thank you, mate. Thank you.
No worries, mate. Cheers. Have a good day.